Hello, this is Michelle with Artful Possibilities. Thank you for joining me on this tutorial. This is acrylic painting on canvas. I'll be using these three brushes, a large 1-inch flat, a 1/2-inch flat, and a number 6 round. I'll also be using a Sharpie for this. This is a great beginner project, and we'll be using a Sharpie for the strings. I call this Home is Where You Hang Your Heart. It'd be a great little gift for Valentine's Day or just any time of year that you want to express love. So I have already base coated this with paint. I am using Liquitex Basics acrylic. Raw Sienna is what I have already base coated in a horizontal motion. And I am using burnt umber, unbleached titanium white. I have an Artist Loft Crimson that I'm using up. And I think that's the only colors I'm going to use today, but if I add any others as we go, I will certainly let you know. I have my water jar ready and my palette with the colors squirted out on it. So again, this has already been base coated in raw sienna in a horizontal motion. Okay, and then you want to let it dry. And I'm just going to create a horizontal wood grain look using burnt umber and a little bit of white. And you can go as light or as dark on this as you'd like. Okay, so I'm going to wet my brush in my water basin, touch it on my paper towel, and I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber and I'm just going to start working my brush in a horizontal motion. Now I want it to be lighter than this, so I'm going to wet my brush a little bit and add some water. I'm going to keep on adding. Now I don't necessarily want this to be perfectly even, so let's go ahead and just start adding some in and not concentrate on getting such a smooth flow, but leave some of it a little bit splotchy, however it comes out. Let's leave it to get some interest. Just going to keep on brushing the paint and pushing it into the canvas. Now if this is a little bit too golden for you, you could also do the background in a darker brown if you wanted. I always encourage people to experiment and try different things. I'm going to wet my brush a little bit. Again, I'm trying to keep this horizontal. Vertical would also look good, but because the hearts are going to hang vertically, I thought it would be more interesting to make the wood planking in the background go horizontal. Alright, and now I want to add a little bit more dark. Don't be afraid to have some strips of paint that just kind of stop and don't necessarily get spread smoothly across the canvas. Okay, and put some in here. I am bringing my brush stroke across because I'm using water and I don't want to stop and start and have brush strokes like that showing. Okay. Okay. All right, making some lighting adjustments. Okay, I'm going to blow dry that just a little bit. I'm going to put my brush in the water, grab the blow dryer, and that should do it. It's pretty dry. Okay, so I want to create it more of like a whitewash look. So I'm going to rinse that same brush, touch it on my paper towel. It's a little bit dirty, but that's okay for this, okay? I'm going to grab some white and a little bit of unbleached titanium and a little bit of titanium. And I'm going to kind of lay my brush down. And just kind of start streaking across. And I want to let some of that background show through like that. I'm going to turn the brush sideways, the skinny way also. So I'm grabbing titanium white and white. I'm going to make a thin line, and then I'm just going to lightly drag my brush over it. I want it to kind of look a little bit old. So I'm letting the brush just kind of skim across the surface of the canvas, and I'm letting some of the background color show. And these older looking spots are happening when I'm stopping my brush. Normally I don't want to stop in the flow of things, but because this is going to look like older wood, I'm okay with that happening. And keep reloading. Unbleached titanium and titanium white, and I'm just sort of dry brushing back and forth. And I'm going to go ahead and do a more solid line again. And I don't necessarily want it perfect. Just experiment and see what happens. You can also turn it sideways, and if it's easier for you to work your brush up and down, you can work it as a vertical design while you're painting it. Sometimes it's easier for me to go up and down than side to side. Keep kind of rubbing that brush over and get some variations. I like the way you can see some dark and light. I'm going to grab a little bit more. Just kind of hit it here and there. I'm going to grab a little bit of burnt umber also and just add some in through here. I'm going to add some darker color here and there. Just pull it a little ways up. And do the same up here. Some darker color. So keep playing between the dark and the light and see what you come up with that you like. This is a beginner painting, so I just really want to encourage you to just kind of play with those colors and see what you like. We're not really trying to achieve any particular planks of wood or anything like that. We're just trying to make an interesting background. Okay, now I'm just grabbing again white and titanium white and unbleached titanium. And I'm just laying it down and dragging the brush. You can almost hear it. You can probably hear it. It's just kind of dry. Okay, I'm just dragging it. And I want to go ahead and hit it here and there. So it'll look like an old brush was just kind of dragged over it here and there. Maybe you found this out in the barn. You can turn the brush the wide way and then narrow, and just get different variations in there. I'm also going to come in, I'm not rinsing my brush really in between because the dirty brush works for this, okay? I go in and put some darker color in. I'm not going to over blend. If you like a farmhouse look and you want things even lighter, you can just keep on adding. I'm going to add just mostly some white right now, just to show you how you can brighten that up too. Again, when I go to my canvas, I'm using just little bits of paint and I'm letting the other layers show through, and that's all intentional. Little tiny bit of paint, come in, hit it here. You can lay your brush down and just kind of drag it and let the paint come off in different splotches like that. Okay, I think I'm just going to play with that just a little bit longer, and then we're going to dry it and we're going to get our hearts drawn. All right, I'm liking that. Now if you want to specifically make it look like planks, I'll show you what I would recommend. And you're going to use the edge of the brush then to go ahead and make some lines in there. Okay, so I'm fairly satisfied with that. I want to come in wherever it looks a little more golden and just put some more color in there. Now if you want to have lines going across that make it look like planks, you would want a brush that has a better edge than this. Okay, this one is a little bit worn, so it's a fatter edge. The bristles are not in a nice chisel edge. So I probably would change to one that has a little better condition on the bristles with that. Now you could go one way or another with this. You could make the planks lighter or darker. I'm going to keep it lighter. And I'm just going to hold the brush the skinny way, and I'm just going to come across like this and create a plank. A little bit more titanium white plus white. And when I do this, I actually like some to be wider and some to be more narrow. So to make it look more like something old than something we would manufacture nowadays that has perfect measurements and everything. And then I'm going to grab some more titanium white and white, and I'm going to make the next board more narrow. This one's a few inches, and I'm going to make this one less. Okay, if you want that to be more pronounced, come back in and use a little bit of white. Okay, a little bit of white on top of your unbleached. There we go. And you can grab more and come in and make some uneven cracks in the wood. So I'm taking my white and unbleached titanium and I'm just making some sort of wiggled lines. And you can come back in and drag your brush back over, laying it down. So I started out saying I wasn't going to make planks, and then I thought you might like to see how you could do it. Again, this is a beginner painting. We're not going to get into a super lot of detail with it. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to blow dry that very quickly and we'll get our hearts drawn on. All right. Okay, so I call this one Home is Where You Hang Your Heart. We are going to draw a large heart and then 4 smaller ones hanging. And I'm just going to use a Sharpie for the strings, as I'll show you. I'm going to use a piece of chalk to draw the hearts. All right, I'm going to grab my ruler. So this is an 11 by 14 inch canvas. So I'm going to center this. So we have a 12-inch ruler. So just below halfway this way, I'm going to place the ruler and somewhat center it. And right around the 6-inch mark, I'm going to make a line with the chalk. Now I like my hearts to be sort of lopsided and higher up on one side than the other. You could do anything you wanted with that. Now if you wanted to make a pattern, you could cut a heart out of a piece of paper, do like you did when you were a child, fold it in half, cut it, and then open it and trace around with your chalk. I'm just going to go from the center and I'm going to go up and down. I really don't want to curve on the heart, but you can do whatever you'd like. And then on this side, I'm going to go up and out. And I'm going to make it bigger on that side and then down. So I might want to bring this one out a little bit more, but I definitely want my right side up higher. And then I'm going to make another heart here. And another one down here. Okay, and then on this side I'm going to hang it here, but I think I'm going to make the left side up higher just to make it look a little different. And then I'm going to create another one right just a little higher because I'm not looking for symmetry, so I want this one a little higher than that one. And I'll do the same thing. I'll make that side just a little taller and make that side shorter. Okay, and any adjustments that you want to make, you can make with your paint. Okay, so before we start wetting those hearts, I want to go ahead and create the strings that they're going to hang from. So I have a Sharpie fine point marker, okay, has a pretty good point on it still. Let me see, I think I have another one with, yes, I have one that has even a finer point. So it's up to you, depending how thick you want your strings, you can adjust. I like the Sharpies because they don't tend to run when I varnish my pieces when they're done, okay? So I'm going to turn this canvas upside down. And I'm going to line up my ruler. Now, keep in mind that there's some width to your marker, so you want to account for that as you lay it up against your ruler. So my rulers are just a little bit off center, and then as I put my Sharpie, I'm going to go above the chalk, and I'm just going to bring a line up and off the canvas. Okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Now you could make squiggly lines also. It's totally up to you. I'm going to line this up to try to create a straight line. Again, my ruler's just a little off center so that when my marker is up against the ruler, the line will be right in the middle. I'm just going to put my marker there and light touch. Now, kids or adults, when you're using a marker on a canvas, you want to have a light touch, because if you press really hard, it sometimes can snag in the texture of the canvas, and it'll be harder to get a smooth line. Okay. Okay, I'm going to do the same here. You can put as many hearts on it as you want. Some people like to put a family name in the large heart and then put names in all the small hearts. Depends what you want to do with this. You could put the year in the heart too, or just make it a Valentine decoration. And I'm going to try to get that in the middle. You always want to make sure you cap your markers. Okay. Alright, so here we go. Let's turn that back right side up. Alright, so now we're going to paint the hearts. And I'm using a crimson color from Artist Loft. So I'm going to wet my brush, touch it on my paper towel. I'm going to take my crimson, start with the big heart. Now, just pull your brush on the edge. You can go up over the chalk. Sometimes the chalk makes it a little hard to get a nice edge, so just try to brush right over it. Or the other thing you can do too is paint up to it, and then when your painting is good and dry, the chalk will just wash away with water. Okay, I like to turn my canvas when I'm working, and I like to have my brush pointing toward the outside edge. Okay, get that nice and smooth. Now, if you paint right to the edge, you're going to have to let that dry a little bit, but if you leave some of the edge without being covered with the red paint, and you come in with the brown, you're going to get your shadowing. So what I'm going to do is grab some burnt umber right now, and I'm going to start putting it on the outside edge of my heart. Okay. I have kind of a lot there. And then I'm going to wipe my brush on my paper towel and come back in and just lightly blend the burnt umber into the red. Now when I do that, I use a very soft touch. And you see how if you keep going back in, you're going to make brush strokes. So you want to go back to the end and just bring it up and in. Okay, so I'm going to continue that. Get some more burnt umber, put it around the edge while my red is wet. I continually turn my canvas. I think it's much easier to paint from a certain direction, so don't worry about turning it. Even if I work on an easel, I still tend to turn my canvas. I'm going to go ahead and put some over here also. So you see, it's really best if you don't put the red all the way to the edge, because now I have wet red there on the right side. Okay. So I'm going to come back, wipe the brush on my paper towel, and I'm just going to come back over my brown and red and just lightly blend. And I just have a really light touch. I'm going to grab a little bit more red to put in here. And I just really want to try to keep that blend between the brown and the red to be sort of subtle, so we don't have a dark brown line that we can see We don't want to see where the brown ends and the red begins. We want it to be soft blend. Okay, and we can come back in and work some more on that in a little bit when that's dry. Okay, so for the smaller ones, I'm going to take my round brush and I'm going to do the same thing. Okay. I'm going to put the red in, and I'm not going to go all the way to the edge of my heart. We do want the paint to be smooth though. That particular tube is a little bit thick. So I'm going to work 2 at a time here because I'm working quickly. I'm going to wipe the red and take some burnt umber, and I'm going to put it around the red. Don't worry about any chalk that's out there. Like I said, when the painting's good and dry, that will just wash away. Okay, so now I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm just going to come in and just lightly blend that brown into the red. I might want to add a little more red in here. Okay. And so we're going to do the same thing on all 4 hearts. Okay. Now if you wanted to add names inside the hearts, you might want to do it with a tiny brush and some white paint maybe, because sometimes black Sharpies don't show well on dark colors. They also do make some good quality white markers. Okay, let's go up and shape the top of that heart with some brown. Now I'm making the shading on these a little on the dark side, but we can come back in with some red once that's dry. So I'm going to work my way across and do these 2 over here. Same thing, red, brown. So you might be able to keep up with that. This, I noticed that this string ended up being a little bit off center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my heart so the string is in the center. So for kids, this is a great little gift for moms, dads, parents, grandparents. It's very easy to do. And okay, let's get some brown on there. And once you put the brown in, you want to wipe your brush off and then very, very lightly blend it. I am going to come back in and add a little more red in a moment. Okay, so that gives you a nice shading all around your heart. So shading helps make them look like they're going back around, and it gives them a little bit of shape and dimension. We'll get the brown on this one. Now you can use any color for your hearts, and you can still use brown, but if you were to use, say you were using, for example, pink for your hearts, you might want the outer edge to be more of just like a cranberry color, and then blend that in over your pink. So you want a color that's darker than your base color for that shading. Okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and get that blended. So again, when I blend, I'm using a super light touch. Okay, we don't want to go and create brush strokes in there. Alright, So now let's go back to this one. They're still fairly wet, so I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to dry these a little bit. Because when you have a layer of paint that's trying to dry, if you come in and you try to add more paint while that's drying, you can end up disrupting that drying process and lift the paint that's underneath, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and put the blow dryer on. All right. I've decided to take just a little bit of orange also for some highlighting. So I'm going to add some Cadmium Red Light Hue to my palette, just a tiny bit. Rinse off my 1/2-inch flat brush. And I'm going to come back in and work on this larger one. I'm going to grab some Crimson Red again and get another layer in here. I don't want to cover up my shading, so I'm just pretty much going here in the middle. And on the upper right in through here, I want to create a little bit of a highlight. So I'm going to grab some of that orange color, and I'm just going to sort of tap it and blend it in. There, I like that a lot. With red, you have to be careful when you highlight, because if you put white into a lot of the reds, they just turn pink. See in that upper right area, right in through here, we have a little bit of highlight in orange, and we can build on that and build it up. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that on these other small ones. Now, if you have a flat that's smaller than this, that will also work great. If not, you can use your round pointed brush. All right, I do happen to have a smaller flat, so I'm going to use that for the hearts. It will be a little faster for you, oops, to see. So I want to get some red in there. The red is a little bit transparent, so you can put it on without really disrupting your shading color. This heart is going to need a little more brown after also. So I'm just adding some more red to brighten it back up and make it more solid against the canvas background. And then with the dirty red brush, I'm going to take a little bit of orange, and I'm going to place it again in that upper right hand area and just kind of lightly soften it a little bit into the other colors. Okay, a little bit more. So it gives you a brighter spot in that upper right. Okay. Okay, so once your painting is dry, this one isn't, but I'm going to take a chance just to show you. You see how just a little bit of water will take that chalk line away? Okay, so there are some areas where I want to add a little bit more brown around the edge and get my edge nice and crisp. That was a little more wet than I would want it to be, so I'm just going to brush it down. A little tiny bit of burnt umber up there again. Just kind of pull it down onto the heart and just softly blend. So look at your hearts, and wherever the brown just doesn't look solid enough around the edge, you can come back in and add a little bit and then just lightly blend it down onto your heart. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit more here. Now, I didn't go much further on this. I just wanted to show you how to make the hanging hearts. But you can add ribbons with your marker or names, whatever you would like to personalize this. You could add flowers to them. All right, there we go. So here we have it. All right, so let me show you how to splatter this also. If you were going to put names on, I would do all that first. Whatever embellishments that you want to see on there, you want to put on first. Be it names, drawing bows, anything like that. I think someone wants me to show how to put the bows on, so let me do that. I'm going to dry this big heart and add a bow to it with the marker. Okay. So if you want just a loose sort of lopsided bow, it's kind of fun to just go ahead and go for it and draw it. You can draw it so some of it comes up off the heart, or you can keep it all on the heart. It's whatever you like. So I'm going to do a double loop bow for you, and I'm just going to start here in the middle. I'm going to come up like that, make a loop, and then I'm going to make my next loop start and stop at the same spot. Okay, so I'm going to go right here at the same point and come in and do another loop and bring it right back there. I'm going to turn it sideways. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start in the same exact spot, make a loop. Then I'm going to start in the same spot, make another loop. And now I'm going to make the tails. Okay, now I intentionally make them uneven. So I'm going to put my marker right in the same spot, come down and up. And you can turn it sideways if you want and do the same thing over here. Okay, and if you want, you can do that on every heart. So this, now you can see here how it looks with just one having a bow. And now I'll go ahead and add bows to these. Okay, loop, loop, tail, tail. Now you can come back in also and just draw in a little circle there. Okay. Loop, loop, and then start in the same spot. So the trick to making them look like this, I'll show you on here also. So you have your heart, for example, you have your string. Well, that didn't go in the middle, did it? And so you have your string, and what I do is I start always in the same spot. And I let my loop come up and over the shape if I want. So here's my first loop. My second loop intersects that one. Same thing over here. Second loop intersects that one, and then I make a middle. Now, this is kind of like a bow here. Your tail would just come right through your loop. Don't be afraid to drag it right through and out. Okay, so that's basically what I did with the hearts. So here's a close-up view. All right, so you can embellish this however you'd like. I think I'm going to go ahead and make the edges a little bit darker. So I'm going to take my large brush and I'm going to take some of this burnt umber and I'm going to put it on the corner, one corner of the brush. And I'm going to lay the brush down with that corner that's loaded with paint up at the edge of the canvas. And the rest of the brush is clean, so it's creating a nice soft blend, and as I run the brush back and forth, it softly fades onto the canvas. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to do the other end, which is the bottom. Now, if you were to go in and try to do the side edge right now, you would pull this color down and make a smudge in it. So we want to let that dry. So I'm going to turn this sideways and I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom. Now you want to be really careful when you're choosing a marker and you want to test it and see if it runs with water. In my experience, the Sharpies do not run, so I really like them. And again, I'm going to make a darker edge. I need a little more water on my brush. And I'm just going to pull that. Again, my dark paint is on only one side of the brush, and it's the side that's going toward the edge. And you see that gives a nice border. It makes it, I think, a little bit more interesting than just having an edge that doesn't have any definition. So we want to let those two dry, and then you'll do the sides. I'm going to give you an example. If I were to run the side right now, you see what I would do? I'd be pulling this color out onto my canvas. So it's really to your advantage to go ahead and let that dry. Now I have to fix what I did. And I'll run the blow dryer on that again just for a moment, and then I can show you how to do the sides, and we'll do a little splatter. Okay. Now same brush, and we want to use the same corner of the brush, and we're going to come in with the burnt umber. Now it's on the corner of the brush that I'm running along the edge, and then the clean end of the brush will blend it onto the canvas. I need a little more water on my brush to get that to blend down into the texture of the canvas. Just want to push it down in. Okay, now I want to do the one last side. Again, brown paint. Put it on the edge of the canvas and run your brush up and down or side to side depending which angle you have your canvas on. Now right here you see a little smudge. That's because that burnt umber was still wet right there, but that's not a problem. As soon as it's dry we can put more on it. Alright, so there we go. This line here is just water and that will dry. I'm going to take my little brush and see if it will stick if I put some burnt umber there now. Remember, if you do have an area that you take the paint away like that, you usually do have to let that dry before you can go back in and add more paint. Alright, so there. I'm going to dry this one more time so you can see this line disappear. I always keep a blow dryer handy, and you can dry in between so that you can go back in without disrupting your base coat. So that's looking pretty nice. So what I want to do now is just give it some splatter. Now there are a lot of different ways that you can splatter a painting. Some people use a toothbrush, and that works great if you can get a stiff one. It's harder to get stiff toothbrushes now out in the world because they don't seem to be recommended by dentists, so I've found that it's harder to get them, and I've kind of changed to doing it more with a round brush. So I'm going to get a round brush here that has some wear and tear on it, and it's kind of fluffy, and I'm going to dip it in the water. This is how I splatter. I dip my brush in the water. I put the puddle of water near the color that I'm going to use, which in this case I'm going to do burnt umber. And I create a watered down paint that's more the consistency of ink. And then I test it. That's still a little thick, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit more water. And I test it to see what size drops are going to come off my brush. Okay. I don't want them too large. Also, I really like to use this method where I hold the brush and I come in and I just tap with my 2 fingers of my other hand. So that looks like, oh, I made a smudge with my palette. Okay, that looks like the size I want, so I'm going to come in and just do some splatter. Now this will go everywhere, so you kind of want to be in an area that you know you're not going to sort of ruin anything. And just come on and tap, tap, tap. Get as much or as little as you want on there. This will go everywhere. You can see it's getting all over my hands and everything that I have around the painting. So now you want your base coat, by the way, to be dry before you do this, because when you start putting your splatter on, if there's an area that you don't like, you can take it away with water. Like, see how this one came out with a line? If I didn't want that, I would just take a clean brush that's wet, and I would come in and take those lines away. So if your background was still wet, you could not do that successfully without making a mess there. But I don't mind these extra splatters on this because it's just supposed to look kind of like an old piece of wood. All right, so that's it for today's tutorial. When it's dry, come on in with just a little bit of moisture on your brush and take whatever chalk is still showing off of your painting. And I recommend, when it's dry, using the varnish of your choice. And any water-based varnish for the craft industry works well. A lot of the paint companies have them in either matte, satin, or gloss, so it's your choice. If you do use satin or gloss, that gives a little bit of a shine. If you wanted to photograph your work, you want to do that before you add the varnish, because sometimes the glossiness makes it hard to capture, to go ahead and capture the picture without having glare. So I will let this dry, then I'll put my varnish on, and then I'm going to paint the edges burnt umber on this. Alright, so that is it for today's beginner tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day.